everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Critique of the Week for Friday, January 1st. Thanks so much for joining us. The first day of the new year. Hope everybody had a great New Year's Eve and stayed safe and all that. It's the first episode of the year, and I had our first hiccup. I kind of pushed the wrong button as I was going live. But that is okay. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. As always, the Critique of the Week is a chance to get that experience of sitting around in a workshop, hearing what everybody feels about your poems and give them that kind of critical, friendly, helpful, honest reaction that is helpful for all writers. And as always, we draw the names for the Critique of the Week from a hat at the end of each month. We'll draw for the next group of critiquers. If you'd like to participate, make sure you sign up at the submittable page. There's a link in the show notes wherever you're watching this, except for, I guess, on Twitter. There's no show notes at all, but you'll find it anyway. So hello to Kim Tedrow, Mark Grinier, James DeSillo. Good to see you. Glad everything's working, even though I accidentally clicked the wrong button. Liz Winfield from Tasmania, hello. Jim Langford from Ontario, hello. Kate MacDonald is here, the author that we're going to be looking at today. So let's hop right into it. As always, please do leave your comments. Continue. Even if you're not watching live, leave them later, and Kate can come back and look at them. Now, Kate MacDonald, you can find Kate at Ether Truth on Twitter. So when I made a online submission form through Submittable and made this more official, I added a window for that. So we can shout out to that, and everybody can go follow Kate MacDonald at Etherreal. That's ETHEREALTRUTH. Ethereal Truth on Twitter. Now let's take a look at these poems. Here we go. This is the first. It's a shorter. Kate, I think I sent you an email. I'm not sure if you got it in time. But the second poem, Kate said, was a little too long, but I thought it'd be good to go over a longer one too. So I don't think it's very long. It's only 2 pages. It's not like it's any kind of trouble. But we'll go over the shorter one first. And this is Shadows by Kate MacDonald. And I'll write down if you want to find Kate, it's at Ethereal. Make sure I spell that right. Ethereal. Yeah, so it combines the T's and the R's. So Ethereal Truth, like that. Okay. On Twitter. Here's Shadows. Darkness was soft, forgiving like a friend, needing only a flicker of candlelight to cast the power of its glow, holding back the shadows that define the night. Until now, when all has changed around me, where darkness was once welcome with delight, now cold and creeping dread surrounds me. I am alone with the shadows of the night. For out there, edging closer, someone stirs. I feel again the chill of passing flight. Red eyes, sharp teeth, silent mirth. Can I defy the shadow of the night? That is the first poem, a 3-stanza with that refrain that sort of changes. And the title is Shadows. Shadows is a little plain for a title. But it works okay. I mean, it leads you into the poem, but maybe something could be more interesting there that tells you a little bit about what's going on. Darkness was soft, forgiving like a friend, needing only a flicker of candlelight to cast the power of its golden glow, holding back the shadows that define the night. I really love the refrain. This is my favorite part of the poem. And the way it shifts a little bit so it doesn't get boring either. To cast the power of its golden glow, holding back the shadows that define the night. So we're getting set up here. And revealing a little bit. Darkness was soft, forgiving like a friend, needing only a flicker of candlelight. So we have this image of the darkness and the shadows with one flickering candlelight to cast the power of its golden glow. The one thing I wonder here is if the golden glow, only a flicker of candlelight, the only sort of implies like the weakness of the flame, and then the power talks about the power of it. And so there's a little bit of contrast there. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not. I'm not sure. Holding back the shadows that define the night. So I like that refrain. Until now, when all has changed around me, so the candle's gone, where darkness was once welcomed with the light, Now cold and creeping dread surrounds me. I am alone with the shadows of the night. So again, I really like this refrain. For out there edging closer, someone stirs. I feel again the chill of passing flight. Red eyes, sharp teeth, silent mirth. Can I defy the shadow of the night? So I feel like this poem, and again, I like the refrain. I feel like this is just way too short. It feels like it sort of introduces what's going on and doesn't really get any deeper into it. And, like more and more things could happen. Like, I feel like we don't know who the speaker is or who or what actually is coming up, what these red eyes and sharp teeth are. And I feel like that could be revealed in a poem where this refrain continues. And I think that would work pretty well for me. Red eyes, sharp teeth, silent mirth. There's something about this silent mirth phrase where the meter or just the rhythm feels off. I'm not sure if this poem is metered or not. Let's see. Darkness was soft, forgiving like a friend, needing only a flicker of candlelight. I don't think it's metered to cast. Could it be syllabic? To cast the power of its golden glow, holding back the shadows that define the night. Nope, it can't be syllabic because that's 11 and 10. So I think there's no meter or rhyme in this poem. Let's see. If anybody recognizes anything about the form that I'm missing, please let me know. For the title, Sharon Ferranti says Darkness Was Soft could be a great title. Yeah, Darkness Was Soft. I like that. That's a good image from the poem. I like that as a title. Darkness Was Soft. That's a good suggestion. So for this line, there's something about red eyes, sharp teeth. The silent mirth just feels too long and slow, and I trip over it. So the rhythm feels off there. Even though it's not rhymed, there's something about the music here. To me, it doesn't feel like there's any meter or... Let's see. So I'm looking at the comments right now. Kim Tedra says a couple of things. First, I think the first line would be more powerful as a metaphor rather than a simile. Darkness was a soft, forgiving friend. Yeah, I think that would be better too. Anytime you can avoid darkness was a soft, forgiving friend. Anytime you can avoid the simile, a simile is a little bit weaker than the straight metaphor because you have that sort of buffer between the signified and the signifier, whereas like if the metaphor is just told right there, there's sort of like no disconnection. You're like diving right into it. So it's a little stronger always to avoid that when you can. What was Kim's other suggestion? Maybe cut the soft. Second, you could strengthen the personification throughout the poem. The neat part about this poem is the personification of the shadows, and how that's a good point, Kim. And so how the shadow's like a friend, and then until now when all has changed around me. So instead of all has changed around me, you could keep in with that like until the friend left or something. I mean, find a better way to say it, but that would keep it more interesting. Where darkness was once welcomed with delight, now cold and creeping dread surrounds me. So we have around me surrounds me. I am alone with the shadows of the night. My main thing is that I feel like I just wanted this to continue. I wanted the whole story to emerge from here. The very Edgar Allan Poe kind of feel. And there's a reason why Poe's poems are longer. They're on the longer side because they tell a story. And then they have these kind of things like refrains and rhythms that lock you in and sort of keep you engaged. Like, they're coming, but they're going to be a little different every time. And that's a compelling thing to make you sort of keep reading. Let's see what T.R. Paulson says. I love the rhymes. This is T.R. Paulson. I love the rhymes and refrain and how the poem moves with the refrain changing a bit in meaning. Feels like a villanelle in that sense. I like the mood of it, but it also feels like it's dancing around what it's really about. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. Also, I recommend working with meter. Either make it iambic or syllabic, or go the opposite way and make it free verse with internal rhyme, perhaps. Yeah, and that's what I'm going to say about the other poem, too. I feel like This, I feel like both these two poems, you'll see the other poem, which I just read to myself before going on air. You'll see that poem too is this sort of similar topic. It's sort of a genre poetry, like a horror or a fantasy. Like there's the Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association. It's the kind of stuff that would be great there, or in a lot of the science fiction or fantasy magazines have a space for poetry. And that's kind of what it's doing. And I think there's a real place for that. But I think using actual meter and being consistent with it really fits the genre well too. Like if you look at, I already mentioned Poe, but if you look at Edgar Allan Poe, there's regular meter and there's regular in addition to the rhyme. And it feels just right to tell a story that way. And one of the things that's always, as a writer, it's sort of good just in everywhere to try to fill a niche and sort of use, stack your different capabilities and find a thing that people aren't really doing much of. And telling stories in that sort of Edgar Allan Poe type form where a story rolls out through meter and rhyme isn't something that happens a whole lot these days. And so that's a fun thing to do. And I would focus on that and keep going with it. But here, as free verse, I couldn't detect any meter that was consistent here. And as free verse, it kind of worked, except for this one line that felt like too clunky. Otherwise, the rhythm was fine, like the voice of it was fine, but I would have liked it to have a regular meter. And I think the other poem sort of slips in and out of a meter in a way that's interesting. So maybe we'll get to that in a minute. But let me see what else people are saying. Roberta Kaschuk says, I like the silent mirth line. I like when things feel off in an interesting way to create contrast and break out of the rhythm. Yeah, I like the slant rhyme between mirth and stirs is good, but there's something about the silent mirth that just, like once you establish, I don't know, there's this fine line to walk between, like I'll put it this way, I guess you never want the reader to think that you just couldn't make it fit. You don't want it to show the author behind the curtain and say like, I'm struggling to make this line fit. If there's a place where the meter's off, you want it to feel intentional, and or where you use a slant rhyme instead of a true rhyme, where you've been using true rhymes everywhere else. You want it to feel intentional, and it feels like it just didn't fit right in this space for me. Of course, varying, setting up patterns and then breaking them is the fun of all verse poetry. Like where to make enjambment, where to make the lines continue, where to use like slightly different rhymes and things like that. That's what makes it fun, actually. Like having a routine, regular rhyme is really boring. But you have to play within it, you sort of have to establish it first. And I'm not sure there's no meter. And I don't know, there's just something about this line. Red eyes, sharp teeth, silent mirth. I mean, just like an article, like something is missing, actually. Maybe a silent mirth. Red eyes, sharp teeth, a silent mirth. And I think it's really because the teeth is such a long stressed syllable, and then silent is such a long stressed syllable, and they're jammed together with another one here in a way that just doesn't feel musical to me. It's like a note that's off in a, if someone sings something and they're off pitch, like this feels off pitch to my ear. So that's why I'm talking about that. And Kim Tendra already said, how about a silent smirk? Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Kim. We had the same thought at the same time. Let me see. Mandy Wallace says it does evoke a mood. And it does, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with not showing, who this, I'm alone with the shadows, and then, I'm not alone. Someone stirs. And we never get to know who the someone stirring is, or who the red eyes and sharp teeth are. It's still this like menacing thing. And I think there's nothing wrong with keeping that a secret. I would just like this developed more, I think. Let me see if there's any other comments I missed. I'll go over to... So Joseph Calderon says, I want more as well, but might be a bit of a prose bias. Feels a bit eerie in a Poe kind of way. Jim Langford says, if it is metered, does that risk sing-song? Shares with a nice dark line without a sing-song quality. Yeah, I mean, the risk of meter is always to end up sing-song. And you really have to make sure that you use enjambment. Like there's enjambment here. only a flicker of candlelight to cast. And then you don't have that, if you end with a really hard stop at the end of every single line and it's metered, like most of this poem does, and you have it metered and you have it rhymed, then it becomes very sing-song. It's always that interplay between what you expect and then subverting that expectation. And there's really something in the dopaminic drive that rewards you for changing expectation, because we're always trying to learn. We're little learning machines, and we get excited by noticing a little change. And that's really what, that's what orchestral music does. That's what poetry does. It sets up expectations and then fulfills it, and then doesn't fulfill it, and then there's that little like learning thrill that we get in the middle of it. And so you have to be careful. You have to vary it if you're going to make it metered. But I think it's worth it, because if you can pull it off, like T.R. Powelson, I'm sure here would confess, if you pull off, it's really rewarding to be able to do, and it's rewarding for the reader too. Let me see. Just keep looking at the more comments here. So Liz Winfield says, like a friend leaves us wondering if it is a friend. It makes me feel other and unknown. Silent mirth is more abstract than the other two. It's a different tone. See, it's not really the tone for that line. It's just the music of it that I felt was off. Having a mirthfulness to these sharp teeth and red eyes is something that's sort of extra menacing. And I think as a detail that works. So for this, I think there's plenty of room to continue it. That's really my main point. So Jenny, Jenny Doherty's saying the rhythm is wrong with that line. The writer has established a solid 10-line syllable, often iambic, and this breaks it for no apparent good reason. Is it? I don't know. Counting, I felt like the count wasn't consistent anyway, and really anyway. Maybe since Kate is here, maybe Kate can. Kate's over on YouTube. Maybe Kate can let us know if she was going for a meter or like just a really loose meter. Let's see, from red eyes, sharp teeth. It's because all these things are stressed. We're focusing on this line so much, but all these red eyes, sharp teeth, silent mirth, it's all stressed. And so it feels sort of at once like it's missing. It just has so few unstressed syllables or unstressed feet that it feels like way too many stresses, and it also doesn't even have enough syllables. So that's kind of why it feels off. I feel again the chill of passing flight. So here, I feel again the chill of passing flight. So that's a iambic line. That's iambic pentameter there. Can I defy the shadow of the night? And that's iambic pentameter here. So that's the thing. A few of them are, and that's why when I finished these lines, I was wondering. But then if you go back up here, they're not. Darkness was soft, forgiving, like a friend. Maybe if you count the stress, needing only. Yeah, and then needing only a flicker of candlelight doesn't feel like it to me to cast the power. So I feel like it. I don't know. Maybe the meter just needs more work. Maybe it is a 10-foot line. A 5-foot line. G.R. Paulson says a lot is iambic pentameter. Yeah, a lot, but I don't think it's consistent enough to feel like it's intentional. Because the thing with the English language is iambics are so natural that so a lot of times they just happen by accident. And so that line between realizing whether it's intentional is a tough one. Let me see. Okay, let's just move on to the next poem. The next poem is similar in style and form, but it's a little longer, so we'll see how that goes. This is Lucifer, again by Kate MacDonald. Okay. Why am I here in this graveyard at night? I really should know, but I cannot recall. The last thing I remember were bright lights and noise. Wait, it was a nightclub. I see a glitter ball. What happened next? My mind's hazy and fuzzy. There's a handsome face, dark hair, silver eyes. That can't be right, but I saw them, I'm sure. It's not Halloween yet, so not a disguise. Perhaps I'll leave that puzzle for later. Let me check the environs. Any people around? Surprise, surprise, the graveyard is empty. Wait a minute. What was that sound? I hear an evil gloating snigger behind me. I spin around. There's nothing to see. A figure appears seemingly from nowhere, and silver eyes are looking straight at me. Good evening, he says, his voice liquid velvet. I expect you are wondering why you are here. It is simple, really. I have abducted you for the joy I'll derive from your fear. What makes you think I'm afraid of you? You actually look quite mild. You're really not that scary, you know, I retorted, and then he smiled. Oops. That wasn't fair. There were too many teeth. A couple were pointy and long. Fangs for the memory popped into my head. Now, what was that tune to that song? I started to sing it, and he looked annoyed. He did not expect entertainment. 3 demons suddenly appeared from thin air and joined in with no prearrangement. We ended the song and then took a bow. Demon 2 said, "It's time to go. Lucifer is livid. You gave us the slip, right? What will I do with your bow?" The vampire by this time was shaking, which is never a very good look. I said, "Dad's not best pleased with you, it seems, but I've been amused, so you're off the hook." There's a moral to this story, which is somewhat trite but true. Beware of men with silver eyes. They'll be the death of you. So again, a similar style, that with that rhyme, those 4-line rhyming stanzas, the meter that sometimes appears and sometimes disappears. It's just not consistent. And the main thing with this one, really the main thing overall, and Kate over on YouTube says, "I love all the comments. I've only started writing the past few months, so I have a lot to learn." I think the main thing I would focus on, Kate, is just learning the meter and reading poets who use meter. Like look up both contemporary poets like Rina Espaillat, who we've had on the Rattlecast before pretty recently. The whole new formalist movement, but also the older, this is a style that reminds of Poe, as we've already mentioned, or Edmund Spencer even, going back even farther. And so to really sort of study that meter a little bit, because it feels to me, and I don't know if it feels like the same to everybody else here, but it feels to me that when the meter clicks, the poem clicks. And there's something about storytelling in this manner that really is a deep tradition to human beings, and there's something fun about it, especially, when the time of year is right, like a Halloween type thing. But there's just something fun about a poem like this to read, and it's entertaining. And the meter has a lot to do with it. Like telling a story through that structure really helps with something. There's something about it that just it's sort of I don't know, like a deep memory or something from the long oral tradition that we all came out of. And so what I would do is focus on just learning meter. And like there's I'm trying to think of maybe somebody can maybe somebody in the comment section can give a good book to read, to learn meter. I'm trying to think of something, but I'm not sure what. Let me see. Maybe Kim Tedrow has an idea. A. Stalling is another person to read. T.R. Paulson says, "I'm dying to see the second one in regular meter." Yeah, me too. That's what I was saying. "I love the story it tells. For an excellent example of how to use enjambment, read A.E. Stallings. That's a good suggestion. This poem made me think of Asphodel." So I love the story, and I want it told in a regular form. That's kind of all there is to it. Kim Tender says, "I love this narrative. It's a good morality tale. Overall, it needs some shaping, and the voice could be stronger and more distinct." Catherine Swanson says, "The second poem reveals more, perhaps even that which was hidden in the first." They do seem connected. They could be even the same poem. I wonder if you could combine. Would that be possible to combine these two, and have that refrain? but using this "Can I defy the shadows of the night," using that refrain to tell this story and make it an extended, like one sort of epic, horror poem. I think that would be really cool. I mean, maybe that's my suggestion overall. Maybe combine this into one poem and tell the story and just make the meter regular. And this, I mean, whose favorite, what were your favorite stanzas here? Because to me, it sort of got a little more regular toward the end. There ended up being like it felt to me like a pentameter, like a 5-foot line and then a 4-foot line. So it was like 5/4 in a sort of one of those ballad styles. I'm not great at knowing all the different forms and things, but this is like 5/4, right? That wasn't fair. There were too many teeth. Well, maybe that's 4. A couple were pointy and long. I guess it's 4-3. Fangs for the memory popped in my me head is a little bit off. Now, what was the tune of that song? But see how a couple were pointy and long. Now, what was the tune to that song? That's exactly the same meter, and that goes. The refrains keep getting, like, just naturally, I think, end up being metered right. I wish I was better at breaking down and diagramming and teaching metrical poetry for people, because I really enjoy it and I like writing it. But I'm more of an intuitive sort of listening to it. I'm not good at, like, which feet, which are inverted and trochees and spondies. I don't really know all that stuff. I should learn it probably as a poetry editor, but it's only 5% of people write this way anyway. So I don't know. It started to sing and he looked annoyed. He did not expect entertainment. 3 demons suddenly appeared from thin air and joined in with no prearrangement. So you see that there's just a way it clicks when the meter, like here and here and here and here, the meter is repeated, and it really clicks. It feels good when it works that way. And then you just want to mix up. When I say the word enjambment, I don't know if Kate knows what that word is, because Kate says she's new to poetry. Enjambment is where you don't have any kind of stop at the end of the line. So down here, well, I guess this isn't even. That kind of should be a stop. The other poem had one enjambed line, which I pointed out, which was where was it? I don't know, but that's where the line continues without any hard stop at the end, without any punctuation or need for punctuation. And so mixing that in is always really important, because you don't want it to feel, we already talked about it, you don't want it to feel sing-songy. But I think writing this in meter is what we really want it to do. Annette Riley says, I started a sing stanza, which was really good. Yeah, and that's also, it's interesting. This is Annette Riley who points this out. She says, I started to sing stanza is my favorite, such a clear visual image like watching a film. Yeah, and it's a surprise too, because there's this like scary figure, and then to start to sing his reaction is a surprising, interesting sort of storytelling thing. I started to sing it and he looked annoyed. He did not expect entertainment. And it really, the meter clicks in there too. So I think that's a good example of how of what the stanzas could be like. Let me see. Fran Smith says, great story and especially good for Halloween. I think children would enjoy it too. Yeah. Poet who uses meter in similar tone, Robert Service. That's a great suggestion. This is Helen Pikolowski Gerhardt. Cremation of Sam McGee is a poem to look at in this form. Yeah, Service is a good example. Just even if you want to do it by ear, just look to poets like that. Let's see. So Sharon Frente suggests Poetry USA, an old book from the 70s, edited by Paul Malloy. T.R. Paulson recommends Kim Adenitzio's craft books, their chapters about meter and form. Mandy Wallace says, I've had the hardest time trying to find a book on pure instruction on poetic form, but there are workshops for it online. Let's see. Jen Hollander's book, Rhymes Reason, is T.R. Paulson's suggestion. Kim Tedder says Paul Fussell, Poetic Meter and Form, but I think it's out of print. You'd have to find a used copy. Let's talk about one more thing. There's a good point. I kind of think about the meter so much, I skipped this. But Mark A. Grenier says, I think the poem relies too much on adjectives. Something more subject-verb driven might have a stronger impact. And yeah, so one thing, for a newer writer starting out to know is that adjectives are really the weakest part, because we're building this sort of concrete space in our heads as we're writing. We're building a world, and the sort of different ways the world can shift, they just aren't as strong as like the actual noun of the actual like objects and the movements within that world as we're building it. So you can kind of think of each word like has a meaningful, like a meaningful an amount of meaning or something. And verbs and nouns have the most, and articles and stuff have the least, and adverbs and adjectives are down there in the list. So let me try to find an example of we'll go back to the beginning of the poem, but of what Mark's talking about here, because I did notice that too as we were going. So like my mind's hazy and fuzzy. There's a handsome face, the dark hair, silver eyes. Like these details, we don't really need to know, like silver eyes. Telling it through, like what the eyes were doing, how the hair was moving or something like that. It's just a more powerful way to create an image, if that makes sense. Let me see other examples of what, again, we have the silver eyes. It just doesn't, his voice, liquid velvet. Like this is a lot of, sort of like vocabulary put into adjectives right there. That's just how his voice sounded. And what his voice does is more interesting, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to explain that point. That it was a good point that Mark Grenier made. And Kinder says, silver eyes is necessary. The moral of the story is beware of men with silver eyes. Yeah, too. I don't mean to cut the silver eyes. I'm just trying to think of examples where, like showing the silver eyes doing something is a stronger way than just saying they're silver. Does that make sense? Continue to look at the notes a little bit. Jim Langford says, perhaps with meter, Kate would find more in Jammin. That's a good suggestion. And Liz Winfield over on YouTube suggests Mary Oliver's Poetry Handbook. And Patricia Rockwood, I think it's the same one she's talking about, probably. Mary Oliver has a good basic and short poetry book that explains meter. Frances Mays writes a longer book with a more in-depth select section. Thanks, Patricia. So Patricia Walker says this, the 4-foot line followed by a 3-foot line is what Emily Dickinson uses most common, and she calls it a hymn style. And that's what I was thinking of. The hymn. Emily Dickinson uses it too. Okay, so let's see. I think that might be all we have to say. I mean, I think there's a great storytelling here. There's a really nice story to this. And I felt engaged all the way through, which is one of the tough things to do, is to engage somebody just with some, squiggle shapes on the page. And this really does. I think there's really good storytelling here. And I just think I just like to study up on meter and write it in a consistent meter. I think it'd be excellent if you did that. And my other suggestion too, I think these could be combined and have that refrain be part of this poem, because there's a great story in this poem, and the story's kind of missing in the Shadows poem. And there's not a great container for this poem, but there's a great container for the Shadows poem. So take the best of both and make it one poem. I think that might work really well. But anyway, I think that is all we have for today. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Sharon Ferrante suggests. I'm just telling all the poets. I know Kate is over on YouTube right now, but if you go to our Facebook page, there's usually more comments on Facebook and more people watching live. We still have 26 watching live right now, and there's a lot of comments. So if I might have missed any. And after the fact, too, people watch these after the fact, especially on Facebook where it appears in your Facebook feeds and stuff. So to Kate and anybody else who's being critiqued on these workshops, do go over to our Facebook page like next week or something, or in a few days, and see the extra comments that people have left, because people do still continue to leave comments, and I still really, we all really appreciate that. Okay, well, I think that is it for the critique of the week for today. Thanks everybody once again for joining me. It's always a pleasure doing these. It's the highlight of my Friday, even on a New Year's Day where, you're not supposed to be working maybe, but we are here at Rattle. And let me remind you that the open mic show is coming up, of course. Every Sunday, Poets Respond Live, we do an open mic for poems about current events. So anything you have, and in the submissions, I've already read a lot of submissions. We have a lot of New Year's poems, of course, and looking back at 2020 and things like that. If you have a poem like that, share it on Poets Respond Live this Sunday at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. And then next week's guest in the Rattlecast is going to be Marjorie Lotfi. That is Tuesday, January 5th at a different time. It's 6 hours ahead of normal, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, because Marjorie is in Edinburgh, Scotland. And I think I said England last week, but she's in Edinburgh. And it would be like 2 a.m. for her if we did it at the regular time. So instead, we're doing it at an appropriate time, 3 p.m. Eastern. And the prompt for this week was to use random... I always should leave this up so I don't forget. Now you have to wait for me to click over. The prompt for this week, if you'd like to share a prompt poem for the open mic there, is to use randomwordgenerator.com to select 3 words at random, or use the ones we did: fear, staircase, and passage. Use all 3 words in a poem, or use randomwordgenerator.com to pick your own 3 words and write a poem based on those random words. That is the prompt if you'd like to participate in that for Tuesday with Marjorie Lotfi Gill. Hope you have a great weekend and a great 2021. Hope the whole year goes wonderful and nothing bad happens at all. And we did 52 of these critiques last year. We'll do 52 again this year. So thanks for joining us for all of them. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend. See you soon. Bye.